Hi, I'm Professor Steve Parker. I'm the internship coordinator here at UNLV, and one of the most interesting parts of my job is supervising the interns that UNLV sends to Carson City, who serve as full-time paid staff for the state legislature during its regular sessions. This morning I'm in the studio here with two recent interns, people who were part of that program, and I've asked them to come in and talk about their experience. And so that's what we're going to spend some time doing. So, Amanda, you want to introduce yourself first?
Sure. Morning, my name is Amanda Schweistall, and I'm an interdisciplinary studies major with an emphasis in political science, anthropology, and psychology. I just recently interned at the Nevada State Legislature for the Assembly Republican Caucus. I worked under Minority Leader Pat Hickey and also the Executive Director Justin Harrison, who is also an intern through this program.
So Justin, the person to whom you reported in the last session, the session before that, he was an intern just like you.
Right, yes.
So this opens up an awful lot of doors and possibilities, doesn't it?
Definitely.
Taylor.
Well, hello. My name is Taylor McCadney. I am a senior here at the university. I am studying political science with a minor in leadership and civic engagement. I will be graduating in a couple of days. I also was an intern this past session. I worked with Senator Tick Segerblum, and I also worked with his legislative assistant Adrian, who was also an intern a session, I think, or a session or two before that. I had a lot of fun. It was very interesting.
Yeah, and the person who Taylor is referring to, Adrian Vieska, this is not meant to sound kind of internal or incestuous here, but Adrian also, he was an intern in this program 4 years prior to the period that Taylor's talking about. In other words, sort of one of the subtext ideas to this is that there are lots of professional contacts that you will have a chance to make when you are up there. And I mean, just in introducing our little discussion here, we've made reference to two people who started off as interns, and they've got regular positions with the Nevada State Legislature. So back to you folks. Who did we decide was going to talk first?
I guess I'll go first.
Okay. Taylor, take over.
Well, going up there, I think some of my daily duties, in the beginning at least, was getting bill draft requests signed, or BDRs, what they call them, and those are basically the first draft of what some legislation is going to look like. Very early stuff. It tends to change drastically over the course of the entire session, and I would go around and I would ask different, senators and assembly persons whether or not they would like to sign on and give them copies of it for them to read, and that was kind of my first meeting these people and having to introduce myself and getting them to know who I was. Some of the other things that I became responsible of.
So just as a quick aside here, this thing called a BDR, a bill draft request, when a legislator is putting together a bill, he wants or she wants co-sponsors. And
yes.
Part of your job was going around and finding these co-sponsors for the bills.
Right.
In the process, you're walking around the whole building and getting to meet an awful lot of new people, aren't you?
Yes. It's interesting because walking around, like, sometimes they're very intentional with who they want you to sign, who they want you to get to sign them. And certain people, you can go around, you say, I'm from the senator's office. For me, it was Senator Tick Segerblum, and say, this is the bill, this is kind of what it's about, are you interested in signing? And some people will say right away, oh my goodness, you work with Tick, he's amazing. And, and they would sign right away, and they would be kind of welcoming, and some other people would be like, I don't know, I need to read that. And, so I had to be kind of flexible with how I was with certain people, because some people.
Now, how do you get to just walk around in the building? I assume that not just anybody can do that. There's some sort of security badge that you must wear.
Yes, we were the week before. I think we started the Friday before we started. I went in early, and we had to go towards the back, past the legislative booths, and get this big badge that said legislative intern, and then had the color so they could know whether or not you were on the Senate or you were on the Assembly side. And in the beginning, they were kind of more strict about wearing that badge. You had to wear it on your lapel. It was very, very professional, not so casual. So I had to wear that on my lapel so people knew who I was.
Yeah, so there are lots of people visiting the legislature all the time, but this identifies you as staff.
Yeah, it's difficult to tell who is who sometimes because, well, in the beginning anyway, because there are so many, I mean, there's some people who are coming in just to like testify, and then there are some people who are working there, whether they're paid lobbyists or non-paid lobbyists, and then you have senators, and then you have a lot of interns, because, I mean, there were 6 of us, but there were still interns from, you know, University of Nevada, Reno, a couple other different little community colleges, so it was a lot of different people up there, and it was a little bit difficult to tell who was who, but after a while, I mean, it was so, Carson City's so small, it's hard to not know who you're talking to.
Yeah, just in terms of what the president of UNLV likes to call the UNLV brand, all those UNR interns who are there, they're day hoppers. You know, they're up there, they're going to school, they jump in the car, they drive 25 minutes, and they do this thing for a few hours, and then they go home. UNLV's interns are there as staff. You live there, you work there, you're part of the community.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know for part of my daily sort of tasks to do was that I was sort of somewhat put in charge of the other interns. Like, I reported to Adrian, and but he kind of delegated me the responsibility of kind of giving them tasks to do, because I was full-time. I was there full-time. I was there 40 hours a week, sometimes more than that, depending on, you know, what sort of deadlines that we had. And Senator Segerblum is a big fan of interns. Like, he fights real hard to get interns. So I think under him it was like 4 or 5 of us. And some of the students from UNR would come maybe every other day. Some would come once a week or twice a week or something like that. So it was quite a bit of us, but I was pretty much like full-time staff, and they treated me like full-time staff in everything they gave me to do. Yeah. You know, they say, write this constituent mail, and if I had other things to do, I'd say, you know, hey, Ben, could you write this constituent letter, send it to me to proof it, and then I print it out, and then I send it down. So
they had to run things through
yeah,
you.
They really did treat us like, I mean, they knew we were in an internship, and I'm speaking very generally with other legislators and staff, but like, they knew we were in an internship, but they held us to very like professional staff standards. And they would cheer for us when we do good things, and then they kind of, you know, tell us and guide us. It was never like, oh my goodness, how could you do this? Why didn't you do it this way? It was more, okay, this is how it happens.
I hope you were nice to those UNR interns. You know, they find it hard to stay on task. You have to watch them carefully.
But I think another cool thing is, because we were there full-time, we got the social networking, and we got the opportunities that others didn't. Right. And that helped build our own both academic and professional portfolio, because since I was there full-time, I was put in charge of a lot of research. So Taylor did a lot of the other work, and it was neat because even though we were both interns, we had different responsibilities and different duties to each of the offices. So Justin, the director of the caucus, while he was working on a lot of the things that Taylor was doing, which was very neat that she got the opportunity to kind of direct, I was able to do a lot of research that actually allowed me to testify on a bill, and a lot of our 15 assemblymen would come to me whenever they needed a question answered. Hey, what's the statistic of this? When did this year start? How much is this? Where is this bill at? So that was very neat that they really relied on us as if we were full-time staff. And I think that's an opportunity that we wouldn't even dream of without the internship.
Yeah. And one of the things that I like to, one of the ways in which I like to talk about the internships is that it's a place where preparation can meet opportunity. Right. People coming in, you know, we do a pretty rigorous selection process, and it's really good people who come in, and then you get up there and things happen. You know, like just now, Amanda mentioning getting a chance to testify on a bill. And Amanda, where did that testifying on a bill ultimately lead you? What came of all that?
I'm very bad at public speaking, so it was really great to kind of get to work on that. I was able to be more confident in myself and kind of know how to place my words, how to say certain things, and actually a lobbyist group had seen my research and had seen kind of what I can do and saw me testify, and I actually got a job out of it, a full-time paid job as I'm continuing school. So
and you are currently doing that job?
Yes, I'm currently a registered lobbyist, which is very neat to be able to say, and I got that from the internship.
Yeah, something like that wouldn't have happened without this.
Right.
And, you know, it's again, the internship is an opportunity for people who get a chance to use it to get onto the first rung of a professional ladder and start moving in the direction that you really want to move. That's different from the kinds of things that are just jobs. That I mean, when I was going through college, I mean, I had my own lawn maintenance service. I mean, I built stone walls, I painted houses, anything and everything. And then you get that first break. And for many people, an internship is that first break.
And like Taylor said too, because Carson City is so small, while she was walking around getting those BDR signed, she met 6 or 7 of the top, most powerful people in the state. So it's really neat because it is so small that even if you don't walk away with a job from it, or even if you only walk away with a line on a resume and kind of the skills that need you to get the foot in the door, your foot is now in that door.
Yeah.
So you know the people to talk to, you know where to go, and they remember you, they recognize you.
It is kind of a gathering point or a target zone. I mean, people joke about the Southwest Airlines flights from Las Vegas up to Reno and Carson during the winter. I mean, that's the who's who, and where are they going? They're all going to the building in which you are serving, and you get a chance to see these people, meet these people, and again, it's where preparation meets opportunity. You can get from this however much you really want.
Well, and they're all very open, I think, as well to receiving and teaching. I mean, when you go up there, you figure out right away how much they value the interns. I know when I first was there was a lot of confusion about where I was going, and it wasn't like confusion because someone had dropped a ball, but it was literally confusion because I had like 4 or 5 different senators were like, yeah, I want that person, and out of David Byron's office, and he was trying to figure out who's the secretary of the Senate. I should probably put it out there, but and he was trying to figure out where I was going to go because so many of them were like, yeah, pro intern.
They fight
because
over you.
they do. They will absolutely fight over you. And I ended up having to split my time. I was mostly with Senator Segerboom, but I ended up splitting my time with Senator Aaron Ford, and I went to his office, and he let me work on whatever bill I wanted to work on, and then working with the Progressive Caucus and all the things that I had to do with that. So
as I recall, one of the people who gets involved in the fighting over interns was another person who was an intern in this program, I think 4 years ago, and that's a woman named Brittany Shipp, and she worked in the leadership office, and was in that leadership office because of contacts that she made 4 years earlier when she was an intern.
Right.
So not to belabor this. I mean, I think the viewers get the idea that, I mean, this genuinely happens. So let's shift a little bit to talk about what it was like transitioning up to there. You have to find a place to live. You have to figure out where the grocery stores are. What about transportation? It's Carson City in the winter. What's all that like? So let's shift from the professional part to the personal part, the living. Who wants to lead off?
I can go ahead. I drove my own car up there, so it took about 8 hours, and I did that a week before session started. And like Taylor, I got my badge early, and I knew where the building was, and I got my clothes all set up, and I stayed at the Plaza Hotel, so it's a couple blocks within walking distance of.
Now, is this just like a regular? It's just a hotel room?
The one I stayed in, I wanted to kind of save as much of the stipend as I could because I did want to go back and visit family and things like that. We weren't really sure what would happen after session, so even though the stipend was more than enough to live by, I kind of wanted to be a little bit stingy with my money. So instead of getting the extended room, I got the smallest room possible. So I had a queen bed in there, and I had a little kitchenette, and there was a dining room table, and it came with a full bathroom and a closet. So I stayed there the whole 4 months during session.
And you did have a kitchenette, so you
Yes.
didn't have to go to restaurants 3 times a day? Or?
No, it was nice because I would stick my salad in the fridge, or I would pop a bagel in the toaster on my way out the door into the building, and it was almost as if living at home because I'm comfortable.
How close were you to the legislative building?
I think it took 5 or 6 minutes, depending on if I wore heels that day, to walk to the building.
To walk,
yes.
To walk to the building.
And the weather was somewhat difficult on days that it snowed, but I brought a big jacket, I brought gloves, and I liked that a lot better because I also saved on gas. Even though Carson City is small, you kind of really want to watch how you spend your money and how you spend your time and things like that. And then also by being in a hotel room by myself versus in a house like some of the other interns do, I was able to focus a lot of time to studying and doing homework outside.
It's just you and your work. Yep.
Yes, exactly.
Taylor, what about you? How did that part go?
Well, it wasn't It wasn't terribly difficult. I stayed at the Plaza Hotel for about the first month, I think is what it was. I was actually in Ohio on winter break with my family, so I had to make a lot of those arrangements like over the phone. And I stayed there for the first month, and I think I had a pretty decent size, like large size room. It had a queen size bed and a kitchenette, and it had internet and Wi-Fi, and that was great. But once I got there, and this is kind of showing like how close people get very quickly, I became friends with another intern in Senator Segerbloom's office from Reno named Ben, and he was kind of a Carson City person. Like, he'd been there for like about 10 years and he knew everyone there, and I very quickly hooked up with one of his friends, and I moved in and I was renting a room. So I went from staying about 5 minutes away to probably, I think, about a 15-minute walk. But in Carson City, where you're working, everything is very close together. It's like downtown Carson City. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's literally, you can go from the Plaza Hotel, and then you're at the building, and then you're at the state capitol, and then across from that.
It's quite a bit different from downtown Las Vegas, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Big old century-old trees and grass.
Right.
And
it's very narrow, kind of, I'm going to use your kitchen reference, but very like galley style. It's like two very long streets, and everything is along that, and if you can kind of navigate back and forth between that, and then everybody kind of hangs out there after even the day is over. I can't.
Yeah, the social life.
Right.
I mean, there's probably not much time for social life, but to the extent that there is, I mean, what do interns do?
Well, I personally, like I think I went camping once or twice with one of the other interns. I went hiking once or twice. I think I had even, like, I would hang out with some of the restaurants or some, like the cigar company, which was a cigar bar, and I met a couple of lobbyists there and had some really like in-depth conversation there. Because even outside the building, like, people don't necessarily turn it off.
Work never stops.
It never stops, and they want to talk to you about a bunch of different things.
And the people who you're just running into are people in the know, and people who are doing interesting things within the political system.
Who are legitimately interested in you as an intern, which is like, you kind of like, wow, this person cares about what I'm doing, but then you have to think about it. A lot of them got their start the same way. You'll go up there and they'll be very quick to tell you, you know, Senator Stephen Horser, he started out as an intern, and he came up here and did all these things, and they get so excited because they see a young person with like passion who is thinking about those things, and they're thinking of like, I could mentor this person and I can make them into somebody, and they're interested in that sort of a thing. So it really is, you go up there and it's very open, I think. You're always, I wouldn't say you're necessarily under a microscope, but people kind of know what you're doing and that sort of thing, so you have to be like on your P's and Q's.
You have to be professional. You have to be a grown-up.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that.
No.
So how much did we pay you? What was the stipend?
Wasn't it $7,500?
Yeah.
$7,500.
And it was over 2 installments, and they were always early, so you never worried about when you were going to eat or what you were going to have that
No
night.
IOUs that you had to sign while you were up there.
Yeah, it was, I think we got the second half early March, and we weren't even expecting it until April.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, it was really even professional and responsible on the UNLV internship program side, where we were always taken care of.
Yeah, it was I think it was more than enough. I was even able to save up a little bit, so, yeah.
Oh, you both were able to save a little bit.
Yeah, and I also bought a plane ticket to and from Chicago to visit family, so I was also able to pay
so
for that.
You can lead a decent life. It's, you know, it's not a vow of poverty when you're
And the cost of living is a lot less in Carson City.
Right.
I mean, at Starbucks every morning I had the regular, because they're so used to seeing you. You know, hey, the usual, yes please, all right, it'll be $4 versus the $6 here. So.
Right. I liked all the local businesses.
Yeah, the local places.
All right. Well, let's talk about the academic side of the internship for a little while. When folks go up there, they sign up for Political Science 490, and you received 6 academic credits for doing that.
Right.
And you know, for people watching this video who want to know all the details on that, you know, those are all on another website page, and you folks can look that up very, very easily. I'm just wondering, first of all, what other courses did you take? Most students who go up there for various reasons want to maintain a full academic load, 12 hours. So you've got 6 credits for Political Science 490. How did you put the rest of your academic life together for that semester?
I don't think it was very difficult, because I just took 2 other classes to stay full-time, even for financial aid purposes. And it was nice because it started earlier than the semester started for 490, so it kind of like it opened up some space for the other two classes. And then
yeah, there's about 3 weeks
Yeah.
between the time that the UNLV semester begins and the legislative session begins.
Exactly, which was nice because I think the textbook was very, very interesting that we read and we wrote the paper on. But then I took an art course, and I believe I took a health course, and I really it was not overly difficult to kind of keep the classes up. I think Jake, who was another intern, took 6 classes. Like, he took a lot of classes on top of that.
Now, these presumably are all DE classes.
Yeah. So the, I mean, because the one thing you have to think about when you go up there is that the pace tends to change a lot. Like, some days you'll be incredibly busy and you're running around and you don't get a second to yourself and you don't get lunch and you're like, and then some days it's basically hurry up and wait. There's nothing you can do because, you know, the bills are in the house and you're just kind of going to pass out. You're just kind of looking and crossing your fingers that your hard work is paying off at that point. So you kind of just have to learn to be flexible. Like on those days where there's not much going on, it's like just sit at your desk and wait for me to do. Okay, then crack out a book. It was literally that easy. I never had to like run or fight or like take off to do anything because I had plenty of time when there was time, and even after that, I mean, it wasn't too horrible.
Amanda, how did it work out for you?
I think being an IDS major made my situation a little bit more unique because I'm not focusing just on political science classes. So some people took an independent studies course. Well, I didn't need that because my 6 credits fulfilled for my degree plan my political science classes. So I actually took an upper division anthropology class, which is another one of my disciplines. And then I took an IDS class, which is one of my core classes. And that was a statistics class. So it wasn't too difficult even for me trying to keep up with the math and the research because like Taylor said, you have a lot of downtime, and 2, because while we're in session, there are no fundraisers going on. So even though there are informal social events afterwards, you know, there's no pressure to go. And there have definitely been times when I had a test due that night that instead I would stay home and I would, you know, read my book, study, or take the test, or do the essays for the internship class, the 490 class. So it definitely wasn't difficult academically. And the pace does, like Taylor said, the pace does change. So, you know, you can go out to lunch one day and we actually took a tour up to Genoa, so that was really neat. You know, you would have some time to do homework, have some time to mingle in the hallways with some key legislators or talk to staff or things like that. So it definitely was not difficult at all.
Except for the end. I can't promise you anything about the end of the session. That's all.
You
what
definitely
happens,
don't want to procrastinate.
Why? What happens during the last couple
Well,
of
during
weeks
the last session, there's a lot of, because there's just a sheer volume of bills that are like the last minute. They're trying to get them like approved at a house like 1 time, 2 times. They're just trying to get them read over and over again, and then they have to make a lot of impromptu like committee meetings, and they're literally like meeting in a hallway, and you're trying to run around and conference committees.
So things are kind of chaotic at the end.
Exactly. Like I think I went home on the last day. I went home at midnight. They're like, we're done, woo, the bills. And then I went home. I went to sleep the next day, and I was getting up because we were going to drive, and it was like everybody was coming in, and I'm like, oh, how did you sleep? And they're like, we didn't go to sleep because we got called back in. So it didn't end.
There was legislators running to and from.
Exactly.
I mean, so you really, really get to see what the whole political process is like, don't you?
Oh, exactly. I think during that day even, it was, you know, Adrian would have me run down. He's like, find Senator Segerbloom wherever he is, write down exactly who votes what way and what happens, and bring it back to me. So
mentioning Adrian again, there's another person I just kind of remembered about, Brittany Shipp, who worked in the leadership office, and she was an intern 4 years ago or 6 years ago. And again, you know, these things open doors and make it possible. You're basically auditioning in addition to working when you're up there, and people are looking. They're looking for talent all the time when they're up there. And sometimes, you know, since we send our very best people up there, I mean, you're pretty darn good talent.
Yeah, it's nice when they're hiring, because I know I was talking to some of them about that, some of the legislative assistants and attachés, and the language is different depending on which house you're in. And they're talking about going back through the interviewing process, and you know, because they were known, and the people know who they were and knew how hard they were working, that, you know, how easy. Not necessarily like easy, it wasn't like a shoe-in, but, you know, they remember you, they remember what you've done, and they remember, and people will request you, like I think Senator Segerbloom requested Adrian, and a couple other people were requested, specifically. So it does kind of open up doors for new positions because, you know, people are very particular when you've done a good job. They will request you specifically. I know that I was requested specifically for certain things, and I'm sure you were as well.
Yeah, I mean, for students who are just, you know, in kind of menial jobs here to make a living, you know, sometimes you're appreciated, sometimes you're not, but I mean, the point is, this is a job that you guys had that definitely has future in it. I mean, it's a career ladder that could lead almost any place.
Yeah, and they would challenge you. I mean, it wasn't, when I talked to Adrian Briesca, who I bring up very often, we talked on the phone before I went up there, and he asked me what I wanted to do, and I was very forward, and I said I don't want to get anybody coffee. I have no interest in sitting in front of a computer all day and not doing much. So I'm hoping that and created the Progressive Democratic Caucus, how involved they wanted me to be in it. Like, it was certain things I had just never done before. I mean, and they were literally like just creating it. Like, I was put in charge of keeping the minutes. I was sort of the secretary for a while. I was in charge of creating a mission statement, which means I had to.
So they kind of treat you like a peer.
You're
just part of the.
In a lot of ways, like we would all sit down together and we'd talk about certain things, and they tell me what they wanted to see, and I'd have to send them drafts. And we even had a meeting at Senator Segerblum's house, and everybody came over, and you know, we talked, and they were throwing ideas back and forth and asking me and what I thought. And I'm like, oh, you guys don't care, so.
Yeah, Amanda, to switch things back to you for a minute. The academic side of Political Science 490. Ogre that I am, I require a few academic components to this. Just briefly summarize for anybody who's watching this what those were, what you had to do in order to get the grade. Although most of the grade is, as you guys know, dependent upon, it's the person who's your job supervisor fills out an evaluation form on you at the end of the semester. I rely very, very heavily on that when I assign the grade. But what other things did you have to do for the course itself?
Taylor mentioned briefly, and I can kind of explain a little background, the book that we had to read before the semester started. So it is very neat that the first day isn't the first day also of session. So it was nice to be able to have some time to sit down and read the textbook. I think it was like 200 pages, so it wasn't very thick, but it also wasn't, you know, light reading in a day. You really had to manage your time and read the book, and you write an essay on, you know, kind of summarizing it and what you think the session is going to be like. And it's kind of really interesting because then the rest of the papers, there are 3 of them, and those are all on the other aspect of it, non-academic. They're all performance. They're all application. So what did you? About
how long are these other papers? Give people an idea.
Yeah, 5 or 6 pages. So they're double spaced. So it's really easy to, especially when you do as much as Taylor and I did. You know, she could easily write a 10-page paper on everything that she did with the caucus, and same as I can, because I researched different things. I looked into CPA laws. I looked into construction defect. We were following the budget bills. You know, we also got to sit down for the lobbyist forum, so that was really neat, where the director of the internship program, the Dr. Parker of the UNR program, actually organized an event where we were able to attend and ask 4 different lobbyists that sat on a panel that we all knew because we had seen them around in the hallways and seen them testify. So we kind of got their advice, and they showed that they all started off as, I think 2 or 3 of the 4 all started as interns. Yeah, so it was really neat.
There's a theme here, isn't there?
Yes, definitely. So it was really neat seeing kind of where they came from and how we can get advice. And David Byerman, the Secretary of the Senate, Taylor mentioned him as well. He actually put together a presentation about what he's doing and what his staff is doing to kind of better the internship program, to reach out to young students or young voters, and kind of get other Nevadans involved in the process and understanding how things work and things like that. So
and these papers, again, they were experiential papers. They weren't research papers. I just asked you to kind of write up what you've been doing.
Yes.
And I mean, it was made a little bit easier too because we also journaled. Like Minnie said earlier, yeah.
Yeah.
Journaled every day and logged in the sort of some of the different things that we were doing, and it was very interesting because like we said earlier, there was a textbook, and the textbook was very, you know, had some theory, you know, it kind of compared like what other legislators look like and kind of try to give you an idea of what you might kind of go into. So it was very interesting taking that knowledge and then kind of using that knowledge as a lens to kind of look around and analyze what's happening and seeing, and then, you know, kind of progressing, like how those things are sort of playing out. And so I really kind of appreciated it more towards like the middle and the end when I was writing those papers. Like I can kind of see those dynamics that play here.
Take the theory and apply it to practice.
Right, right.
Yeah. And it was also interesting because some of the points that the textbook raised, especially social and cultural, you know, it pointed out statistics and trends and the evolution of women or, you know, minorities in the legislature. So it's really neat to be able to look around and say, wow, you came from nothing, you came from poverty, and look where you are now through hard work and dedication. Yeah. Now you're our elected official who represents us. Or, you know, there was the Black Caucus, there was the Southern Nevada Caucus, there was the Women's Caucus. So the Hispanic
you know, you
caucus,
mentioning, I keep coming back to alumni of this program. You mentioned elected official. There's another person who was an intern either 4 or 6 years ago, Elliot Anderson. He's now an assemblyman, and he became an assemblyman because the person for whom he worked, an assembly person named Kathy McLean, when she basically served as his mentor, you know, and she just showed him so much about political life and how you operate, and was willing to endorse him when he decided to run for the assembly himself. And I mean, for him, the internship was a catapult right into the legislature for the very following session, and he's going to law school at the same time now that he's doing that. Just one last thing, maybe a couple of parting summarizing ideas from you about the internship that you did in Carson City. And Taylor, why don't you lead off?
Summarizing ideas about the, well, I mean, it was just it was a great experience. I earned a lot of contacts while I was there, people I talk to now as I'm transitioning out of my undergrad career. I have people who I can call to kind of like, you know, try and find a different place and trying to find out what I want to do.
You have some very real resources in your pocket, don't you?
Yes.
Because of this.
Definitely. Senator Seger-Bloom was more than happy to write me a letter of recommendation for law school, and I'm in the middle of applying to law school right now, which was absolutely great. I ran into a friend who was a legislative assistant and now works, you know, for a firm, and was saying, you know, message me after the holiday is over, I might have something for you. So that was something that was very nice to take away. You know, people were saying you did a great job, you know, and I would love for you to continue to kind of work with me after that. So I think that was really, really good.
Amanda, you're up last.
Oh no, pressure. I definitely think that no words can describe the amount of opportunities this is given. And we're not just saying that to say it. It literally has, at least for me, it's definitely changed my life. I mean, I was working in a doctor's office as medical records, and there was really no way for me to move up, and I left my job to go to the internship, and I walked away with a career. So I think it's really amazing when they see the hard work and dedication, and they see how much we're willing to do anything that they ask, and you learn so much, and nothing a textbook can ever teach you. So even just the learning experience itself has made me realize a lot about myself, and I think it was a really enjoyable and really good decision.
Wonderful. Well, thank you both for coming into the studio today and talking to me about this. And I think maybe the final thing for me to say is that I hope that your just effort in coming in this morning and doing this helps me find some interns for Carson City for the next time around who are at least as good as you guys.